Are all narcissists abusive or are just some abusive? Let's get into it today. Let's talk about the rate of narcissism and abuse and whether or not that those are intricately connected or whether or not it is something that just happens sometimes. There's a lot of controversy around this topic. I know that if I want to get hate, all I have to do is put out a piece of content saying that all narcissists are abusive. But let's explore this more closely and find out if that's a true statement to be saying. Um, Brittany, would you check to finish up? Would you check to see if you can hear me on on the other channel? Would you go over there and check it for me? It shows up that I am, but I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. So thank you for that. Yeah, what I did before, I went live on this. And by the way, I'm Dr. Kerry Kerr McAvoy. I'm a psychologist with over 20 years of counseling experience. And I went live about a month or so ago. And I took the DSM-5 9 criterias and then went through them and said, is this abusive or not? And the conclusion was you had to get 5 in order to be diagnosed with NPD. But I couldn't find a set of 5 that you could get and not be abusive. I mean, one of the characteristics of the 9 characteristics ends up being abusive. So if you come at it from that angle, I don't really see how that's possible. But I got to thinking about another angle that we didn't talk about in that live that I want to talk about in this one, and that is, what is abuse? Maybe the reason there's this tension that this feels like we're unfairly calling out and demonizing narcissists is because we disagree on the definition of abuse. So I want to spend this live talking about that and seeing what you guys think. If you think that is all narcissists abusive? I know those of us those of us who have been abused certainly experienced the abuse, even though maybe we were never name called. I wasn't ever name called, believe it or not, and was extremely sadistic and abusive. And he never physically touched me, so it wasn't like I was being physically harmed. So let's get into what is it really that victims are talking about then when we talk about narcissistic abuse, and maybe what is it that the public doesn't understand when they see us come out and they see this wonderful person that we were in a relationship with, that this great coworker or the fantastic neighbor, maybe they are great churchgoer, why the public looks at us and thinks you're crazy. I don't know what you're talking about. So I really like to dig into today about narcissism and abuse and the connection between the abuse. So let me talk about a few rules to this live today. I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy. Again, I'm a licensed clinician, a licensed psychologist. I have over 20 years of counseling experience, and I'm an abuse survivor. So this actually has happened to me. But I have some rules to this live, and that is, besides keeping it polite, we want to keep it polite here. We also, this is a place where it can get pretty busy. So I want to, if you have a question for me, we do a lot of talking to each other here. If you have a question for me, please put a thumbs up in your comment so I know that it's directed to me. And then also, I would love to have let's avoid politics and let's avoid religion, not because those things aren't great topics, and sometimes I do get into them, but we really want to focus this today on mental health issues. And the last thing is because I change my hair all the time. I'm a wig wearer, so I'm always like wearing a new wig. Let's just not talking about my appearance. It's kind of awkward for me, and I just don't really quite know what to say. Maybe that's common for everybody, or maybe it's my autism. I don't know. It just makes me kind of feel a little weird. So we'll just stay away from my appearance, and we'll stay away from what's happening politically right now, which I hear it's getting crazy out there again. And let's not talk about religion. Let's talk about narcissism and abuse. And already I see some of your comments coming in that one of the points that you're making is that manipulation is abuse. So let's get really, really picky on this for a moment. I want to ask you a question. This is the question. Think of anything that you do relationally, even having kids. Take any decision that you make and tell me how it's not self-serving. Everything that we do is self-serving. Everything. Because our body, ourselves, is about survival. So So here's the why do I say that? Because I want to point out that there's a fine line between s- self-care, preservation of self, and becoming exploitive of another person. So that's one big question I want you to kind of pause on for a second. And there's another big question I'd like you to pause on for a second, and that is define abuse for me. What does it mean to be abusive? That's a fascinating topic because it's not necessarily leaving bruises. Back in my day, I mean, I grew up in the 60s, and the when CPS was called on a to check out a family, they wanted to know if there was any marks on the body. That was one of the guidelines that was being used as an indication of abuse, was direct, obvious, observable signs of harm. We've changed. Now, do I think the definition of abuse has changed? No, I just think that they just weren't as a society, we weren't ready to talk about the fact that abuse doesn't have to leave marks on the body. There are a lot of ways to leave marks on a person's self-esteem, a lot of ways to leave marks on a person's self and psychology of self. So obviously that's too narrow of a definition, is to say, well, as long as no one's like overtly, obviously harmed, then there's no harm. So let's go back to what is then abuse? I find this kind of a challenging topic, actually. I mean, a challenging even definition. It feels like it should be obvious, but it isn't. Because here's the other thing. I got into an argument this week with somebody over gaslighting. This person was accusing me of actually creating a video only for views, and said that what I was talking about in a podcast, it was actually a topic in a podcast, that everybody gaslights once in a while. We don't mean to, but good people as well as bad people use gaslighting. So, what is abuse? Okay, so Evil Shelliter says it's the imbalance of power. It's an inequity of power. But I have a feeling you mean something else, because here's another reality. There's always an inequity of power. There's an inequity of power going on right now between you and me. I happen to be the one live streaming, so I can decide if you're even here or not. I can certainly, so in other words, right now I'm holding the power. There's an imbalance. So it's more than an inequity of power. I think it's what we do with the power that's problematic, because there's always an imbalance, even in a relationship, a couple's relationship with two people. There's an imbalance of power. One of the things one of the things that happens in relationships, sorry, I got caught on a comment trying to read a comment. One of the things that happens in any relationship is one of the partners is more invested than the other partner. Just that the shift of an investment creates an inequity of power. The rule of thumb is, unfortunately, is the person who is more invested in the relationship is the one with the least power. So in other words, if you're the one trying to save the relationship, you're already in a one down position. The person who doesn't want the relationship is the one who holds the power in that situation. So, yeah, it's interesting, Brittany. You asked if it's a morality problem. Here's what I think. This is my definition of abuse. Let's see what you think of your. Let's see what your definition of abuse is. And thank you for those of us just joining. What we're talking about is narcissism and abuse. Is it always go together? So here's my definition, and this is me. It's Dr. McAvoy. It's not research based. It's just me putting a lot of thought into this topic. I think abuse is when we use the inequity of power. And do agree with you that it is partly related to an inequity of power, but when we use the inequity of power in a way to the harm of the other person at the benefit of ourselves. So what I'm saying, I'm talking about exploitation. When there is overt exploitation or covert exploitation that's harmful and degrading and hurtful to the other person. Now, okay, that's my definition. So what do you guys think? What do you think? Does that work? Maybe I'm missing some nuance, because here's the thing. If you start to dissect what I just said, that then means there's a lot of things that we have accepted in our culture and in relationships, and that maybe we ourselves do, that might be considered abusive. So I would love to know what you think of that, because now I'm putting all of us into the hot seat here, that we have to then, if whenever we're in a relationship with someone, we have to think about, why am I doing what I'm doing? Is it in some way a degradation or exploitation of the other person, whether it is even something they don't know about? Here's one of the lies that narcissists say to us, and that is, as long as you didn't know, it didn't harm you. I thought as long as you didn't know I was cheating, then it doesn't harm you. Well, no, I mean, it does harm me because it harms the integrity of the relationship. That's abuse. And we made a commitment. We assumed that we both understood the rules, and I've put investment into that, and I assumed you did too, and you're violating the investment that I made. That then is exploitive and abusive. So, but it can go all the way to, so can I repeat my definition? My definition is, let's see if I can do it because it was off the cuff. My definition is, abuse is whenever we use the inequity of power in the situation in a relationship in order to exploit or degrade the other person or the relationship, whether or not the other person is aware of it or not. That to me is abuse. And yeah, I agree with you, Evil Shelater. We're all toxic occasionally. So yeah, that then kind of brings up to the next point. Then what then defines abuse versus just occasionally being toxic? And several of you have already said, and I totally agree with you, it's a habitual pattern. That's where the narcissistic's personality of seeing themselves as unique and special is a problem, because they then see the rules don't apply to them because their needs are greater. The demands of their need in the moment exceeds your needs. In fact, you're not even really show up at all. So Eddie, you said you're speechless. What makes you speechless about that definition? And and Emmy Rosen said that is a defining event. That definition is a defining event. So yeah, I would love to know why, what you think of the definition, and why some of you guys are feeling kind of blown away by this. Um, I Yeah, it's Margaret says they make me want to puke. I probably it is very vulnerable. I mean, I just was finished writing a script. So I have longer content, and every week I put out like a 10-minute video that's deconstructing narcissism and deconstructing a pathological love relationship. So I'm 2 weeks out. What I wrote today won't be shown for 2 more weeks. And what I wrote today was, I think, is it 2 weeks or maybe it's a week off? But what I wrote today had to do with narcissism and sex. And it really made me do a deep dive into what is sexual intimacy. And the discovery, so as I'm looking into it, and then I had to ask the question, why do victims put up with really bad sex? Because we do, because it's empty. There's no one there. This is performative. It's not emotional. It's very performative. So yeah, it's kind of powerful. It's got me in really thinking about all of this, about exploitation, about the fact that for a narcissist, this is the revelation I had. I was writing the script today. This is, I think, what a narcissist's worldview is like. So imagine you can't see anyone else's existence. It would be like in a world where no one existed but yourself, that literally you're blind to every other person in the world. Every other person that you see is simply to benefit your existence, and you use them as such. So there's not any emotional connection. There's not being seen and being known. There is just, to degree this person is getting their own personal needs met. That's lonely. Any of us who's ever been in a relationship with a narcissist knows it's probably the loneliest relationship we've ever been in. I found the whole experience incredibly sad, pathetic. Actually, the word was pathetic. Yeah, so twins lens lady said, totally agree. It's all about power and control. There's a graphic called Power and Control Wheel for domestic violence. You can Google it. It's very helpful to understand. Yeah, there definitely is a cycle. There's a cycle to abuse that happens, but when we kind of like peel back the what happens inside of the relationship that defines from, there's a there's a kind of like a love bombing or a romantic stage where everybody's trying to make up, and then starts to walk on eggshells, and then waiting for the blow up, and the blow up happens, and then there's the apology and the makeup, and then you go back into the romantic. So yes, there's a cycle of abuse that happens in these relationships. Narcissistic abuse is a little different than that's a domestic violence situation. Narcissistic abuse situation is one in which the narcissist presents a false front. You think you're meeting this incredible, perfect person. Instead, you don't know that you're meeting somebody else. So there's this reality, this dual reality that gets created, which caused tremendous cognitive dissonance. And then there's this moment, some place in the moment, when there's a big like exposure, and you discover the person that you met isn't the real person. And now you're committed, and they've kind of locked you in and are threatening you and intimidating you. And there's all sorts of stuff that happens that makes it really complicated, but you feel stuck and trapped. And then it moves from disillusionment to discard. That's sort of a narcissistic abuse description versus domestic violence description. So it's different, but similar. So, I'm kind of going back and seeing what somebody said here. So when you put a thumbs up, I know you're talking to me. So why do abusers make us feel we need to over-explain ourselves? Is that what you asked, Kate? And so good to see you, Kate. I'm so glad you guys are here. And how can I stop? Okay, yeah, you asked it more than once. I'm trying to go back. I'm finding the thumbs up here. Yeah, it's why do they do that? Well, they do partly to throw you off. That's another way to for a power inequity. If I make you have to over-explain yourself, then I can claim I don't understand. And then that's why then I can say, I didn't do what you wanted because I didn't understand. It's just a nice way to distract and to defeat you from having an effective, from whatever you're stating for them to say they can't follow through. Another reason they ask is if they do that partly because they want you to justify. It puts you on the defense, and if they can put you on the defense, then that then creates an imbalance, an inequity of control. And so now you're in the weaker position because they're continuing to put you in the spot of making you acting as if what you do or say doesn't make sense, or that it's stupid, or doesn't like kind of line up. Yeah, so you're asking, why do they need to do that? And how do we learn not? So part of it is that learning not to over-explain is just to not over-explain. The best mechanism to throw the power inequity back into more of an equal situation is to do this, Kate. It's to say that whenever they start to do that, to say, I said it already, I'm not repeating myself. Or I don't know what about that's not understandable, and I'm not going to go over this again. Or just to say this, I'm going to say this one time, and I'm not going to do this again and again. And I know you tend to ask a lot, but I want you to know I'm not repeating myself. And then just to stick with it just repeat that message over and over and over. It helps to do that. It throws them off. It confuses them when you do that. Yeah, it is an imposition because so Kerry said, why is everything an imposition? Well, it's imposition because back to the idea that I said, imagine that you're in a world where you literally don't see anyone else. You don't see anyone else. So if no one exists, and then you feel like, and all that's important is your own needs and what you want, then anything that's then put on you as a request is an imposition, and you're going to resist that. Again, it's due to their blindness of other people. There was another question that came in that somebody was asking you about the DSM-5 and narcissism. Do I feel like the shoe fits when she's talking? Oh, you guys are talking to each other. I'm sorry. Yeah, somebody asked about the DSM. Are addictions common with NPD? Yeah, absolutely. Partly because there's chronic boredom and chronic, just sort of like life isn't thrilling. And because of that flatness, then they do a lot of things are risk taking. And addictions certainly help fill that need. When you feel like something's missing, you're going to do things to help fill that void. So they do end up doing that. Yeah. Exactly. My Blue Sky says they need to fill the gap inside. Have you heard of the word low receptive capacity? So every one of us has an ability to take what we get around us and use it for something. So when someone affirms you, like even right now, when I answer your question, does it actually help Does it do what you need it to do for you? That process, that's reception, you're receiving something that's coming in. And so someone loves you, like say you're in a bad space and you're having a hard day and you call a friend and the friend listens and they give you a lot of oohing and support and you feel like this person's really showing up for you. The ability that you can experience it, I'm saying the person's doing it well. Let's just for a moment put aside, maybe not everybody does that well. That's true. Not everybody does that well. But say that you had a friend who really knows how to show up and they show up and they show compassion and you feel heard by that conversation. So what happens though for some of us is that it comes through it goes through us. It's almost like we're a cup with leak. We're a leaky cup. We have holes in the bottom of our cup. And so when someone pours in affirmation or love or support or nurturing into us, it drains through. It just kind of like pours through us and we can't hold on to it. It doesn't change us. It doesn't make us feel better. So that same thing happens with our love. We get into these relationships and we like pour ourselves into this person. We give them our attention. We give them a lot of love. We give them a lot of affirmation. But again, it just sort of like, it just pours through them. And as a result, nothing changes and they need more. And I actually heard this is true for some people. There are people who, for whatever reason, can't ever feel satisfied with food ever. They're always perpetually starving. They're hungry. Can you imagine gorging yourself with all the food? Say you're at a feast and you're gorging on all the food that there is, but nothing fills that driving hunger, that starving feeling. Imagine that. Wouldn't that be awful? So that's what's happening for some of them, is that they're just this emptiness, this perpetual hunger for whatever, for attention, for specialness, for compassion. And so whatever we do, it just kind of pours through them. Oh, that's interesting. So Twin Lens Lady said there's a hungry ghost analogy in Buddhism. That's fascinating. Yeah, and that would make them ghost-like. You're right. That's a really great, a powerful imagery. Thank you for sharing that. So somebody asked, 88 Jamala asked, why does it hurt so much? He looks like he's happy with his new girlfriend. He's not happy with his new girlfriend. That's all show. Everything, remember this. This is really, really important. Don't forget this. When you met them, you didn't meet the real person. They pretended to be who you wanted them to be in order for you to like them, to make a great first impression. So you didn't meet an authentic person. You met a reflection of yourself. So what you're seeing now is also a reflection. They're showing up for the new person, acting like this is a great moment. And I think for a moment, they sort of believe in the idealized wish that this new love somehow will change everything, just like the new love with you was going to change everything. So that's partly part of it. But I think there's another part of it. And that is they also know that what they present to the world is a facade. They're lying to the world, that everything they do is a lie. It's not real. It's inauthentic. So I think partly what you're seeing is their need to be hey, I got out of this really bad relationship. She or she is the mess. I'm not the mess. And that's the message they're projecting. But they're also projecting a message to the new person. And that is, I'm so in love with you and you're the perfect person. So there's a lot of like lies on layers of lies on lies going on. It is hard. It really is hard. Mine actually posted engagement pictures and we were either not divorced yet and by the way, we had a fast divorce. So my divorce occurred in the matter of 6 weeks. I was divorced from filing. 6 weeks. I know most of you have to wait a minimum of 6 months, and some of you are struggling for years to get a divorce. Mine, what happened for me, and I got really lucky, I see it as divine intervention, is that my son was dying of leukemia at the time, and I was several states away from where I filed. So I asked the courts for special, compensation for me, special circumstances, and they granted it to me, and they granted a divorce just like that. So I got super lucky because that meant my ex wasn't in power and I wasn't in power, and it really saved me because I knew he would like drag me for whatever he could to get whatever he could out of me. So it was really, and I wish I could remember, I wish I could give that to all of you who are caught and trapped. I wish all of you could have an easy an easy, exit out of your relationship, because I know so many of you, your lives are being ruined and your finances are being ruined because it just doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. So I'm going to move the camera TikTok. Sorry about that. So, because I can't see it, so I want to be able to read around it. That's an interesting question. So I'm going to, Phoenix, you said I was talking about intimacy. Any insight on those who withhold it completely? Yeah, that's a fascinating. I do cover that in that longer video script that I was writing today. So let's go back to what I was saying. So narcissists aren't able to show up authentically because that would be risking emotional vulnerability, and they don't risk emotional vulnerability. It's all about getting their needs met, not actually meeting somebody. So it's needing, not meeting somebody. So as a result of that, so intimacy then recurs within the shell of what they can get out of it. You only serve their needs, and it's very performative as a result of that. In fact, I would be curious how many of us would say the narcissist in our sex life watched. They actually weren't very good participants. They were more of a performer than somebody who was experiencing it. I know that's certainly true in my marriage to the narcissist. So if that's true, then sex is the weapon. It's then something you utilize. You use it as both a punishment and a reward. You use it, if the other partner sees that the only connection they're going to have with you in any kind of emotional capacity is to be sexually intimate with you, and so it serves that purpose, then they're going to give it when they want, when they want to sort of like control you, control the circumstances. Yeah, thank you, Keegan. Yeah, I it was definitely true in mine too. Or they're also going to withhold it as a way to say that, let you know that you're not in control, that they're not going to risk showing up for you. So they're going to withhold it as a result of that. But they also withhold it because they're not interested in you. So he or she then may do that as a way to, because they're diverting all that energy. Remember, I said they had a low receptive capacity. So one of the ways in which some narcissists work is they need a lot of sexual affirmation and sexual adoration. And the minute they've conquered you, and it's happened, and you're no longer a novel, then they're going to move right on to the next person. And obviously, they're not going to then stick around. There's no interest in you anymore, which is, again, so harmful, because here's the thing that's so awful. If this was two narcissists who are in this relationship, and no offense by your words, I'm not offended by whatever people say on here. I mean, so you guys talk honestly here. I appreciate that. Here's the thing that's painful. Narcissists don't pick narcissists for a relationship. Narcissist picks the opposite for the relationship. And that was proven in Sandra Brown's large research study in 2014 out of Purdue University, is that she looked at, out of 600 relationships, she looked at the characteristics of the victim. Characteristics of most victims, 63% of the time, 2/3 of the time, victims in those relationships were well-functioning, healthy people. This idea that victims are pathological, broken down, traumatized individuals who, because of a bad self-esteem, can't resist a narcissist attraction is not true. 2/3 of the time, not true. Most of you here talking to me were not that. You didn't have a big history of trauma. You didn't have a history of broken relationships. You actually happened to be a really nice person. What happened was you had two traits that tend to be really high, that make you vulnerable to toxic people. And they spot you for these traits. They look for you. And that is, you're highly agreeable. Now, don't think agreeable means compliant. That doesn't mean that. Agreeableness means you're open, you're receptive, you're cooperative. You like to do things as a team. You work well as a team. You tend to, you play well in the sandbox. That's what it means. You're a person who you coordinate well with other people. And the other high trait you had is you had a lot of conscientiousness. That means you're a person who has moral integrity. You have high standards for yourself. You have a kind of code or ethics you live life by. And one of them may be you believe in the goodness of other people, that you believe people are capable of change, and you think things can work out, and you think the world could be a better place. So you do all that effort to make that happen. They're attracted to you for that because you're the opposite of them. Think of magnets, opposites attract. So they're attracted to that about you. Partly not just because you're an opposite. They're attracted to you. And here's the awful part, because they know they can manipulate and exploit you. That's the horrible, sad part. That's part why we do a lot of dumping on victims. We say, be less like that. Well, really? You want to live in a world with nobody who wants to work as a team? You want to work in a world that's not cooperative? You want to work in a world with no morals, no moral guidelines? You're saying to victims, stop being who you were, which attracted them to you. Sorry, I'm getting on a soapbox there. What we're saying is don't be nice. Be not nice. Yeah, okay. Well, then that means this is not going to be a nice, very nice place to live in. It's going to be a terrible place. There's not going to be a community here. How do you do that? So anyway, that's what happened is they meet you for these qualities. Well, as a result of these qualities, then you show up and you keep hoping somehow that you loving on them and you pouring into them is going to change them and make things better. And we put up with way too much. So the two traits are they're agreeable. So if you go out and take right now, you guys can I'll go out and take this test. It's free. It's open source. It's the Ocean test. They're called the Big Five personality test. So if you just put into Google Big Five personality test, you will find this test. And it looks at your openness, agreeableness, how high your neuroticism is, how much conscientiousness you have, and if you're extrovert or introvert, it will look at those qualities. And what Sandra Brown found in 600 couples, she looked at 600 couples. That's a lot. Any reputable research study needs a sample size of 30. She had 600, which means she had a really good sample size. So her sample size showed that 2/3 had no history of trauma, had no history of abuse, were good, high-functioning individuals, and they got into these. Unfortunately, that's narcissists and sociopaths are attracted to that group of people. I did take the test. I'm moderately high on agreeableness, and I nearly top the scale on conscientiousness. And you know what my narcissist loved to say to me? He loved to say to me, "You're without malice." She's really trying to say, I love your gullibleness. I love your naivete, because that means I can exploit you for that. Sad, very sad. Yeah. So Mary, so good to have you in Blue Sky. I love to have you as well. It's so wonderful. Yeah, narcissists tend to often be in positions of power. I don't think it's because they have high emotional intelligence, though. I want to disagree with you on that one, my Blue Sky. I want to tell you, I think it's because they have high degree of social, like common sense intelligence. They tend to be very charismatic, and because high emotional intelligence also includes self-reflection and empathy, and they're crappy at those. But they do have, I agree that they tend to read the environment really well. They tend to be really high intelligent when it comes to survival. That's what I would think. It's, those types of things. Yeah, so evil shelter, you took it, and you're high agreeable and conscious as well. Exactly, yeah. Yeah, so, but I do agree that what you're kind of tapping into is this predatory ability to recognize vulnerability. That's really the big difference. So you asked if I did answered on the withholding. Yeah, I did answer on withholding. The withholding serves several purposes. I see silver hands. I do see your question. I'll come back to it. The withholding, the test is called the Big Five personality test. Big Five. If you put up Big Factor 5 or Big Five, you'll find it out there. Yeah, Big Five. So they withhold is a weapon. It's a tool to reward and punish. They also withhold it because they've moved on, because part of the thrill of being intimate with you is to say that they did it. And once they did it, they don't really build bond and build connection with people. So then they continue to be fascinated with their partner. Now, I do know people who are in relationships with narcissists who had a lot of sex, tons of it. But again, it's only for the purpose of the partner. It's not for the narcissist. It's not for the purpose of the partner. And again, that's often insensitive. It's way too often, or it's at times it doesn't work, or there's all this pouting that goes on. It's tends to be very coercive and manipulative and passive aggressive. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was the answer to that question. So let me go back to silver hands. What's the difference between narcissists and sociopaths? That's a great question. I appreciate that. They're actually very different. Well, I take that back. They're close. They would be like almost the same household. Very, very similar, but different. And the critical difference, I think, between the two is the and this is a subtle thing. It's hard to pick up. The core of a narcissist is shame. They're all about persona, best representation of self, because actually their self is very weak. It's a very fragile core. Whereas and Keegan, I will get to your question. I know it's way off topic. I'll probably wait to the end of the hour. So I'm going to stop at 5 o'clock. So if you can hang on to about 4:55 my time, which whatever time is your time, I will answer about why you're ruminating and how to stop. Okay. I know you've been asking that more than once, and I will get to it. I just want to stay on topic on narcissism until then. But the core of a sociopath or antisocial personality disorder or psychopath, their core is actually empty. They've theorized there's not a lot in there, and it's kind of hollow. So as a result, they feel this incredible boredom and restlessness, which they fill in with thrills. They thrill in with it. They're adrenaline junkies. If you really think about it, they're always pushing the limits. Hey, Louise, so good to see you. They're always pushing the limits because they're looking for something that sort of enlivens them and gives them excitement, which is why they're so predatory. Well, for one, because there's no core, that then means there's no conscience. That means they may have, their conscience is all about themselves. Their value is themselves. That also means they lack empathy to other people, and they end up just they're very focused then on just looking for, they'll do stuff that you're horrified by, that they're shocking. Like, why would you do these things? Some of them are life or death stuff, but they're looking for the next thrill. Hey, Elle, so good to see you too. So that's why. I hope that answered the question. Oh, okay. So you are talking about narcissistic abuse. Oh, I thought you were talking about like you're just watching videos. So Keegan is asking, let me go back to your question, that he or she is watching a lot of the videos, and I think you mean like personal videos, like photos, stuff on your phone. You're watching them videos over and over and over, and you keep wondering about why this person discarded you, and you're confused about that, and you keep focusing on that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of us are. Part of it, what you're experiencing is you're experiencing a trauma bond. So, and the cognitive dissonance is confusing you. By the way, I have not done any self-promotion, and I should do that. Let me stop for a second, and I will make sure I answer your question, but let me pop in. This is a perfect moment to say I have a course to help you resolve your cognitive dissonance called First Step to Leaving a Narcissist. It's a 7-hour course. You can find out more information in the link in my bio. So if that describes you, you're really struggling, you might want to work through it. It includes a workbook, and it will help you process what's the true, because I said they create a dual reality. There's a false reality that they want you to believe about the relationship, about them, but there's also a real reality. And you get confused, and like the brain, who's like the computer who can't compute, you just go over and over and over, and you're trying to make sense of that. So you're watching narcissistic videos. Oh, okay. So you're watching videos about narcissism, trying to make sense. Is that what you're saying? You're watching all of this? Yeah, so you blocked her, and you can't have contact with her. Yeah, that makes sense. I still get that. You're still trying to compute. You're trying to understand what happened. And the other reason that this happens is because you're shocked. I mean, this whole process, you invested. If this was a hokey pokey game, you put your whole self in, but you just discovered that the narcissist in your life only put their arm in, or maybe their head in briefly, or whatever. And that now they've like left, and they did it again. So as a result, there's a massive shock and huge sense of betrayal. I have a membership club, an exclusive membership club, and where many people are in your position. They're leaving or left. Yeah. So Full Heart says she's done the same thing. She wanted hours and hours of videos on it. What I did was I read a lot of books. So the narcissist in my life controlled the television. And plus, remember, when he discarded me, I was at the hospital with my son who was ill with leukemia. So I accessed online and books because I didn't have access to the TV or or good internet. I didn't have good internet. So I just tend to read a lot about it. But yeah, it's because you're trying to make sense. So this membership is called Toxic Free Relationship Club, is for narcissistic abuse survivors, whether you're currently in one or you're trying to get out of it. And it has 2 tiers. The lower tier is for community support. I will do office hours in there once a month. And the higher level is called Academy. And there's where I'm going to do online courses, meditations, breath work, and teach you about how to heal, teach you steps to like techniques to use to stop, like one's called stop and distraction. I'll teach those types of things. And I do office hours in there each week. So if that's something that you find is going to be helpful, it's for the less than a cost of less than a cup of coffee. No, it's not that. It's for less than the cost of one coaching call a month. So at the lower level, currently it's on sale for $75 a month, and the higher levels on sale for $100 a month. So if you would find help by being with a group of other survivors, but also get a lot of contact with me, I send you guided exercises. I also give you access to all my webinars, access to my course, access to my books, all of that. If you find all of that useful, please check it out. So back to the rumination. Yeah, you're trying to make sense. So something is inside of you is locked. You're locked into this confusion and you want to solve it, but it's not solvable. Did you hear me? It's not solvable. Both realities are true. At the same time, both realities are true. It probably was some of the things that you had, there was way too much. That's why the group is so helpful, Keegan, is it helps you kind of like slow down a little bit and take in more of this input and process more. And then you also have more of this direct time with me. Oh, Lee, I'm so glad you're here, Lee. Thank you for joining me today. We're talking about narcissism and abuse. Are all narcissists abusive? So, hey, Lee Hammock's in the house. I appreciate that. So yeah, it's you're trying to break the cognitive dissonance, the confusion. So what I'm recommending, Keegan, is stop trying to find the answer. There isn't an answer because both realities are true. It probably at times was the best relationship you ever had, but also at times it's the most horrible, most toxic relationship you ever had. Yes, they did at one point sometimes feel a lot of like something for you. They believed the idealized dream they created for you, but they also at the same time have pathologized you in a very unreasonable way. So there's no like key to this dilemma. The key to the dilemma is for you to to create a discipline with yourself and to begin to start building in other things to preoccupy you in order to focus on this, because you'll sit and spin in this forever. So it's what you want to use is a technique called stop and distraction, where you literally catch yourself thinking about this issue. You stop and distract with something that takes a lot of attention and concentration. And you do that in the beginning. You may do that 1,000 times a day. You may have to do that. Yeah, you're trying to make sense out of nonsense. Exactly. There is no answer to this. So you literally, every time you catch, stop and distract. A great distraction technique, by the way, is math. Take 1,000 and try writing it backwards by sevens, subtract by sevens, or find all the multiples to 1,000. That would take you a long time, but try to do something like that really helps. Yeah, I do agree with Monica. Monica's suggestion is to try to write it out. It helped me a lot. One of the things that I did was I wrote the book, Love You More. And nice to meet you, Caleb. I really thank you. So one of the things that really helped me was I created the scenes. So I actually literally wrote the scenes out. He said, I said, he said, I said, this is what happened. And one of the things I found is I started seeing all the lies and I started making sense of the deception. It really brought me a lot of peace, but you may not like that. You may want to just try the stop and distract technique. But, oh, thank you. I'm glad you're finding this informative. Yeah, I love to teach, which is why this academy is really, yeah. So throw yourself into music. I think that's awesome. Maybe, I don't know if you write music, but maybe you want to try writing a piece or something. Yeah, exactly. Sing or memorize something. It does help. I agree with Monica. It really helps with the cognitive dissonance a lot. Yeah. So Shay says it's been 18 days with no words from him. Yeah, that's hard. I know that first stage, man, it's just brutal. You have to basically work it out. How to work with echo in the brain after months of separation. Can you say more, Blondes, what you mean by that? I think I know what you mean. I think that what you mean is that they stick in your head. I want to talk about that. I'm actually going to be talking about that in the club this week. That's the topic on my office hours for Thursday, So 1 o'clock at Thursday in the membership club, we're going to be talking about why we still hear the narcissist in our head and what to do about that and how to view it in a different way to give you a lot of power back. So this is going to be super exciting. It's going to be on Thursday in the academy, actually both the Inner Circle and Academy on the membership. We're going to be talking about this. Yeah, I do think Speak Forever, it helps to do that, like journaling and all that kind of stuff. No, the membership is not free. It's $75 at lower level and 100 at the higher. Think of it this way. How much would you pay for a coaching call, especially a psychologist? I'm a psychologist. I charge $195 for 50 minutes. You get an hour from me for 4 times a week for $100 a month. That you can't even have a coaching call with me for that. I give a lot of content at the higher level. I get a lot of content at the lower level too. But so that's one way to view it, is if you are going to be doing therapy or you're doing the coaching, this is what you can get. I still recommend you do coaching or get therapy, but this is another way you can augment your mental health. I'm going to go backwards for a second and see what questions I missed. I did do hours and hours of I did. All of you guys are saying that you're doing that. Yeah, I did do that. That's part of the initial stage when you're really trying to make sense of what happened. It's very common for a lot of it. Yeah, thank you. Any advice on how to help my daughter realize the need to go no contact? So your daughter, I take it, is talking about your toxic partner, her father. You're asking how to help her see her need to go. I think that's a tough one. How old Lynn, tell me how old your daughter is? Yeah, Daphne, that's really tough. Daphne said, I'm having issues knowing what's real and what's for show. It's tough knowing what's real. This is why it's so tough, Daphne. It's tough because, oh, hi, Debbie. So good to see you, Debbie. And is it only cure leaving? Here's why it's tough to know what's real and what's not real, because both is true for the narcissist too. It's both for show, and it's also both at the same time they're believing the lie. They believe their own lie. That's why it feels so authentic. I'm a very good at detecting deception and secondary gains. So when a client would come into my office, oh, it's okay. I see that, Lynn. So when a client would come into my office and start to tell me something, I knew when I had a really good spotter for inauthenticity and just show, when they're just being manipulative and wanting me to sort of like give them a lot of attention. I knew when that was, but I could not spot that my narcissist was lying to me. Why? Because they believe it. So it's both true. It's for show, and at the same time, even though it's not actually real, they believe that it's real. Isn't that weird? That's why we are not better at detecting them, because of it. It feels real. They have an authentic connection emotionally to what they're saying. So it feels real. So Lynn, you said your daughter's 42 and you're talking about she's in a relationship with a narcissist or her father is a narcissist. So who are you talking about? I want to make sure, Lynn, I don't answer the wrong direction. So can you tell me that part too? Yeah. So Phoenix said that's her ex, your ex-husband. You still didn't clarify for me. Your ex-husband or her husband? I think you mean her father, right? Your daughter's father. Yeah. Okay, her ex. Oh, okay. So she's left a toxic relationship and she's not blocked them. Oh, does she think it was toxic? Does she realize that her ex is a narcissist? Probably not. I bet you she doesn't realize that. Narcissists love to keep the door open. They keep the door open because, one, if they're running short on supply, then they have that person to go back to. And the other reason they love to keep the door open is because they also want to have the narrative that they're the good guy and the wonderful woman. So if the person who blocks looks like the one who's overreacting, and then you say, oh, I don't know why they do that to me. I've been really nice to them. And they have this narrative going for the world. And so it just plays into that narrative. So it's kind of like lots of reasons. I'm sure there's more reasons. I don't know if Lee's still here, but I'm sure he could give us more reasons why they do that. But they do that. Yeah. I think what I would do is I would recommend that the next time you see her get hurt by this, for you to say, "Yeah, that's why I go no contact with narcissistic people, because they come back and hurt us. Oh, he abused, oh man." Okay. Yeah, introduce the idea of jade to her. Jade means never justify, explain, attack, or defend. It's JADE. Never justify, accept, explain. I'm sorry, never justify, explain. No, it's the E. Never justify, attack, defend, or explain. I have a feeling she's still trauma bonded. I have a feeling she also is struggling with cognitive dissonance. So one thing you might do, I don't know, I'm trying to think, you could get the workbook with her that I write. I wrote, it's called First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist. You can get the workbook. It's on Amazon, and then see by working through it with her, maybe that's helpful, but I don't know how much help she's going to want from you. So, I mean, that's hard. It's hard when it's the third person out. I mean, you're the second person out. It's really hard. Yeah, sometimes the reverse discard is. So somebody asked, why do narcissists cheat? Or why do men cheat? Actually, it's not just men cheat. It's a shocking number of men and women cheat. Shocking number of relationships have cheating in it. I don't know if you know that there's a lot of cheating that goes on. Why do people cheat? Well, they do cheat for lots of reasons. Partly they cheat because they stop working on a relationship and they start to feel like they're not really connecting well emotionally with the other person. I think men cheat for different reasons than women cheat. Men cheat when they feel like they're not being appreciated and seen and respected. Women tend to cheat when they're feeling lonely. So they do have different reasons to cheat. Yeah, you're welcome, Lynn. And let me know if that helps. Come back and let me know, okay? But why a narcissist cheats for supply is because the power, the acquisition of a new person, the ability to have control, just the thrill of it, all of that just is very exciting to them, and that's why they cheat. And why do they cry during an argument? Is it to harvest your compassion for never understanding? Well, yeah. So next level up says high value men cheat because they can. We like variety. Well, I have to tell you, I'm feeling a kind of like that was triggering. I'm feeling a lot of when you say that. I don't consider anyone who cheats high value. I'm sorry. That's not a high value behavior. Yeah, it's not high value. Sorry. High value is someone who's authentically present and has integrity. And cheating there's no integrity in cheating. I'm sorry. And it also displays a lack of emotional sophistication. So, yeah. Breathe. Whoa, man. But I appreciate you risking that. If anybody ever told me they had a history of doing, I'll tell you, if I met somebody who said, "Hey, I've cheated on my past relationship," I'm not, no, I just learned something really big about you that I would never want to risk with you. So I don't consider that yeah. No, I don't. Well, I don't consider that high top shelf. I'm sorry, I just disagree with you. That's not top shelf to me. So that's bottom shelf behavior, honestly. Yeah, and even to think that's a really privileged idea, very privileged. That tells me somebody thinks they're damn special, and I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who can't see me as special too. So, but back to the question, crocodile tears. Why? Sorry. Whew, man. But I appreciate you showing up and saying that. It's interesting. Why crocodile tears? Partly because in that moment they feel their life is coming undone. They're frightened. You have been the scaffolding. You've been the foundation that they've built their life on. And no, I'm sorry, 7 figures and 6, and none of that makes any pedigree. I'm sorry, it doesn't. It really doesn't. I wish men would stop thinking that's something it's not. And that's part of the problem. You think it's something and it's not. And yeah, there are women who would say, "Oh, yeah, but you know what? They're young, immature women. And whether or not they're maybe not actually young, they're young here and they're young here." So yeah, thank you for muting him. It's just not helpful. It's just not helpful. Okay, why do they cry? They cry because they've built their life on you. And you're providing some things that are very, very important to this relationship. It may be that you're providing a place to live. Maybe you're providing money. Maybe you're providing stability. Maybe you're keeping the family together, and that means access to the kids. But there's something that you're providing that's holding everything. You're certainly providing emotional stability for them, for sure. So when they get found out, they're like stunned. For them, literally, the world's like crumbling. So there's a part of it that is actually real, But there's another part of it is very, very manipulative because, um, at some level that they know what they're doing is wrong, and they know that if they get caught, they're gonna like everything's gonna come undone on that. They kind of know that, but they like this is the weird part about narcissists again. It's called splitting. It's called splitting with compartmentalization. So let me explain splitting because splitting was super hard for me to get in grad school. It took me a long time. So all of us see things both simultaneously, good and bad. When you tell me something about yourself, I have a reaction, and it's both a positive reaction and a negative reaction. Both most of us learn that things are a mix of both. They're both black and white, gray. They're both good and bad. Things are gray. But people who are really immature psychologically don't see that mix. Things are either black or white, and they flip flop. That's why sometimes they think you walk on water, and the next moment they hate you. They're jumping between both parts of the split. So when this happens, so what they do with what they do is that they know it's bad and they also want to do it. So they split off the bad part and literally like put it out of their mind. It's like it's like it never existed. Once they do that, it ceases to exist. So that's how they get away with it, and they don't feel guilt because it's not existing. But then when they get caught, then everything kind of comes together. No, autistic people they're literal. Autistic people are literal. That's different than splitting. No, autistic people don't split. Immature egos split. But literalness can look like that, but it's not. It's basically concrete thinking is what you're seeing there. And it can look black and white because it's concrete. I hope that makes sense. But it's not splitting. Splitting is different. A good example of splitting is bad cop, good cop. And why they do that is they're playing off the person. They're actually brainwashing the person they're interrogating, so they'll feel sympathy or connection with one person and then trust them against the other. So that's an actual demonstration of splitting in action is good cop, bad cop. Yeah. So they get caught and then they want you not to leave. Maybe ultimately they don't care if you leave, but in that moment they're not ready. So they're out of power. They've lost power because you found something out. So all the shift of power shifts into your direction. They don't want to lose that power. So they end up like breaking apart for that. So part of the crocodile tears is real, but part of the crocodile's tears certainly is they do everything. It's also manipulation, exploitation at the same time. Very much so. It's both. That's the answer. It's both. Which is again why it moves us. If it was just simply a tantrum for show, then you would just say, who cares? It's pathetic. I have no respect for someone doing that. But because there's a part of it that's desperate and feels so, intense and authentic, it hurts. It hurts us. We resonate with that. We recognize that, and it controls us. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, so Deb, I did describe interrogations. Yeah, well, yeah, mine did too, Kerry. And I love your name, and I know you and I've had that conversation before, what awesome name Kerry is, but mine was very emotional too about some things. Mine said how much he loved his sons and how precious it was to be there, and then hadn't had any relationship with them, hardly yet. And whenever he did, it was all like, "What are you not doing? And you should be doing differently." And it was not like supportive and wonderful to me. This kid probably didn't even like hearing from his father. Probably was awful hearing from his father. But I think what happens is that there is a part of them that's, sort of like this childlikeness about them, this childishness about them, that they resonate with emotions. They're not without emotions. We often think that because they do these ruthless, callous things, they're emotionless and they must be cold. No, they're not cold at all. Again, somebody said this already. Think of a 3-year-old. They're about emotionally at a 3-year-old. They're very kind of emotive, and as a result, then you're going to see they emote things that are powerful, they'll emote. So Blonde, I finally see your question. I know you've been asking me, working with the echo after months, what to do with the echo, like will he come or call? Yeah, that I know. What I said to you is please join the club and we'll talk about it there. That was my answer. Probably that's not a very nice way to handle that, but how to handle I would recommend that you do the same thing Keegan needs to do, which is stop and distract. Don't try to answer the question. There is no answer to the question. The question is no. You already know the answer to the question. That's why you get caught into it. You hope, but you also know there's a chance because they hoover. So you will stay caught in that question. So it's best to not entertain the question. We can't say to ourselves, stop thinking about something, because the minute you do it, you start to think about it. If I mentioned white elephant, you guys are all now thinking of white elephants just because I mentioned it. So the way to avoid it is to say, when you catch yourself thinking about this, same goes for Keegan, you catch yourself thinking about this, stop, there it is, and then you do something, you do something else. Yes, Sandy, they always hoover. Yes, they like to keep the door open. It's partly to keep control over you, partly to soothe themselves that you're still thinking about them, partly because they always need supply, partly because they don't want to be the bad woman or the bad guy. And so by keeping, having you like on the fringe then makes them say, I didn't do the leaving. See, we're still friends. So do I think anybody could ever successfully stay with a narcissist? I know a lot of people who live with them for forever. Now, is it successful? No, it's not successful. No, who would want to do that? That's a person putting up with a lot, the person who's very lonely. I know someone right now, a good friend of mine. I used to when I went to grad school, I lived in a different state, and I suspected her partner was a narcissist. I connected with her shortly when I right about the time I met mine, and was first married. I met her, and she said to me on the side, "I know mine is, and it's exhausting, and it's been a lot of hard work, and it's been costly." She said that it's been costly. She is a very now, please, I'm going to say this word, hold on, because it's probably triggering. She's a very godly woman who believes in her commitments. And I'm not saying those of us who left are not people with morals. I'm not saying that. I'm not. Please don't hear that. But what I'm saying is that for her, this is a hard struggle, and that's not something she feels capable or able to do. I love the woman a lot. She's a dear friend. I wouldn't want her life for a million years. I wouldn't want her life for a million years, but I understand her decision, and I'm not going to judge her for that, but I think that she's given up a lot. I do think she's given up a lot. So, no, I no longer do therapy these days. This is the last thing I'm going to wrap up. I've been here an hour today, and I do this for about an hour. These days, I'm putting a lot of my energy into a club membership. The 4 hours a week, I'll be meeting with the club. So if you'd like this, I will be here on Tuesdays, but the club, I'm no longer doing this on Thursdays. I will be doing office hours on Thursdays at the academy level of the club. So I love to see you guys over there. It's for less than a cost of one coaching call a month. So I think it can be a critical part of your mental health process. Certainly was for me. I did this kind of thing for a year, and it cost me $200 a month. So I'm not charging that. It's $100 a month at the academy level. And I love to see you guys. That would be really, really awesome. Hey, this is wonderful. I'll be back next Tuesday at 4 p.m. I did change the time. And like I said, I'm going live once a week on Tuesdays and take your questions. If you want more of this on a consistent basis, please consider the club. It's called Toxic Free Relationship Club. It's more information in the link in my bio. If you just ask for more information, it sends you all the information, and then you can sign up from the information. So it sends you a letter, gives you a lot more information. So yeah, that's how. Go to the link in my bio, click on I want more information, and then it takes you to the page that describes both levels, and then you can, and then takes you to how to purchase it. This has been awesome. I appreciate it. Daisy, I don't take people on lives unless it's planned ahead. I just don't find that's helpful for us to do that, but feel free to DM me, okay? I'd be happy to talk to you. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. This was very lively today. I super appreciate it. Thank you for that gift. I'll see you guys back on Tuesday.